In this episode, which is a two-part episode, I will be interviewing Trillo and Suede, who are going to be discussing their new short film, Casa Noir. And I will be joined by Jonathan Geffner to review the classic film noir from 1947, Kiss of Death, which was directed by Henry Hathaway. The screenplay was by Ben Hecht and Charles Lederer, and it was based on the novel called The Hoodlum by Eliezer Lipsky. I hope I have that somewhat right. It starred Victor Mature, Brian Donlevy, Coleen Gray, and Richard Widmark. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast exploring storytelling on film, as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, theater, among other areas of the arts. I want to welcome back to the show the noir detective duo Trillo and Suede, who just recently released a short film that they made called Casa Noir. Trillo, Suede, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's nice to be here again, Robert. We kind of missed you.
Yes, it's always fun to come back and visit with you.
Always a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about what Casa Noir is all about.
Well, hopefully everybody who's viewing this right now has seen Casablanca, the very famous, iconic, classic 1942 movie. And this is a tribute and a parody to that classic movie. So because we love the movie, it's one of the real greats, and we wanted to sort of pay tribute, but also parody it as the whole film noir genre, of which Casablanca is arguably part of. That's another subject, whether it really is film noir, but it's film noir-rich at the very least.
Yeah,
and it's something that lends itself so well to parody, which is why we created these personas for us in the first place, and the series of a lot of things that we've done.
Yeah, Casa Noir is just the latest. You probably saw our web series.
yes.
We have 2 seasons of the web series. It's all there on our YouTube channel for everybody to enjoy. So Casa Noir is the latest venture.
I quite enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun to watch, and I love how you substituted well, not so much a substitution, but you added COVID in the mix, is that they need to vaccines to get for all the refugees to get out of America to get into Canada, but they need their COVID. You don't say COVID, but it's pretty much strongly implied what you're getting at to get the transit papers to get out of America, which I thought was such a great touch to show the also frustration of being stuck inside, in this case stuck inside of the what was the diner there called?
The Last Exit nightclub.
That's it, Last Exit. I love that. Whose idea was that?
Well, should I tell them the truth?
What is the truth? The truth is that we work together, and I do most of the writing.
I'll let him think so. Actually, the real brainstorms. If you really like one of our concepts or ideas, you can pretty much bet that I'm the guy who thought of it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But we work together as a team.
Yeah, we are a good team. I'll give them that.
Fantastic. What was the most challenging thing about making this film?
Actually, the practicalities of how to do it. First big challenge is money.
That's always the first big challenge, and a big one it is.
Because it was out of our pockets, and this was our last venture. We promised to ourselves that we're going to put our own money on the line to make this, because we really wanted to do this. So finding the least expensive ways to do everything, but doing it well, that's always a big challenge.
Just practically speaking.
But then putting it together, there all kinds of headaches in filmmaking, as you probably are aware. This, no matter how much you plan,
something always goes wrong, and you can count on that. The one thing you can count on is that something's going to go wrong.
If you're lucky, not too many things are going to go wrong. But we held it together and we put it together, so we're very pleased with the result, how it turned out.
Great. That's great to hear. And was there any conflict between the two of you on set? I see our femme fatale, who's in the Ingrid Bergman role here, was torn between her love between the two of you. Did that lead to some on-set conflict as well?
It always does, these kind of situations. So, as usual, this is no exception that the leading lady there, Katerina Schmidt,
That's the actress's name.
she kind of had the hots for me, if you know what I mean, or other. So,
Right.
Trillo once again was left out. Poor guy.
Ah,
The
next one, the sequel.
sequel. Well, we hope. Let's see. Maybe I'll get another shot.
So why? So you mentioned, because you have such a love of Casablanca. Why Casablanca to parody as opposed to, let's say, a film noir that everybody loves, even though it's noirish, as you both said.
Well, we'd love to do a whole series of them if we could work it out that way.
If we get some kind of sponsorship or get some, a Netflix deal or something like that, we'd like to do a whole series of these kind of parodies of various noirs. But the one we chose has settled on Casablanca because it's one of the most iconic movies of all time.
And also,
Right.
it has so much excitement. It's kind of full of kind of suspense and drama, and it moves like gangbusters. Really fast paced and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So it has the classic Humphrey Bogart character, of course. There's nothing more iconic a character than he was, Bogey.
And so it has all these elements sort of that people are most familiar with in that whole general genre as I think the most iconic of all. So we figured let's go for that one.
Oh, I thought it worked so well, and having Casa Noir in the title makes people start to think about whether Casablanca is a noir or not, because it's sort of one of those noir or not categories, I suppose. It's really up to the audience. Did you both try to make it look a little, I mean, it looks noirish, the movie as it is, but was there any intentional, did the director or the DOP work out with both of you how to make it maybe look a little more film noir, or was it just to parody Casablanca as much as you could?
Well, the main thing was the parody as much as we could, because we figured if we accomplished that, we also accomplished the goal of the noirish look. Because
Right.
it's noirish looking enough, the Casablanca.
That's
True.
right. Well, it doesn't have all the elements of noir as and we could discuss when we were getting into it. But the look of it is quite noirish. So it has the cinematography, which has a lot of shadows in it and stark contrast and things like that. So we aimed just to try to recreate that look.
And how did you settle on who to direct the film and who to shoot it? Was this someone you already knew, or how did that process
No,
go?
that was a kind of tedious search.
Ah,
Very long story.
Yeah, I think we'll have to hit that story another time because there are a lot of roadblocks in the way and difficulties that arose. But we finally found someone who I think did a very good job on it. And so all of the cast and crew were very pleased with.
that's great. And now also, you guys are both detectives. So how did you shoot a film and work as a detective at the same time, or did you have to put the detective work on hold?
Well, the sad part of this whole thing is that a lot of our clients throughout New York City had to suffer without us for a couple of weeks as we were very busy.
Right,
So it's
right.
like we felt a little guilty about that. And I don't feel guilty very easily. It gives you a sense of the gravity of this situation.
Oh yeah, some people just had to do without our services for a couple of weeks.
Well, hopefully New York survived somewhat.
Yeah, apparently. I wouldn't say no worse, no worse the wear or something because they're in pretty lousy shape right now.
That's
But
true.
yeah, but we're here trying to straighten things out.
Great, fantastic. And where has the film been shown? Where can people see it?
Film festivals, it's already run the circuit all around the world in dozens of film festivals.
And
Great.
we've won awards in almost every festival that we enter.
Yes, which is
So
so
all
great.
kinds of awards, best short film and best comedy.
Best parody, so all kinds of things. So we're very happy with the reception it's been getting. But it ran its course, and we got what we thought we could out of that as far as whatever, acclamation.
And notoriety. So now we just put it on YouTube, and we're still trying to use it as a demo for doing the big stuff.
Yeah, we're still
Right.
trying to push this around and promote it. as a sort of demo for the big things we want to do, the other feature films.
And maybe a series and stuff, that would be cool. Don't you think? Can't you see it on Netflix or something?
Oh, certainly.
Uh,
I could totally see it.
yeah, well, that's a difficult road to go down right now.
Right.
We're still trying to find a way to do that, but we've got it there to direct everybody's attention to. We have, at least now, we feel as a good production value kind of demo to show people of what we can do.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations to you both on the success of the short. For those of you watching, I highly recommend checking it out. You can see it for free on YouTube, and I will put the link in the description box below for where you can watch it. Trillo Sway, thanks so much. I know you got Jonathan in the wings there to talk to me a little bit about a film noir.
Geez, is he really there?
Yeah, he's right over there.
He's always around.
You know who he is? He's a crazed fan. He's really kind of a nut job.
I know. He's a bit of a nut.
You know what he thinks about it? I'll tell you a little secret.
Yeah.
He thinks he created us. He thinks
my
he
God.
created our characters, our persona. He thinks he writes the scripts.
What a nut job.
Yeah, I guess.
Wacko.
All right, well, we'll see. Maybe, but he likes talking, so I think he's harmless. So we'll see if he can join you. Okay.
All right. Bring him on in and have a good day at
Nice
work.
to see you.
Jonathan, welcome. I know you had to wait a little while.
Yes, I know. I always have to give them top billing, those guys.
Right. They sometimes knock you a little bit, but they seem to have an affection for you, which is great. At least.
Well, at least they tolerate me, so I'm glad that I can hang around and sort of get some kind of vicarious enjoyment out of their exciting ventures.
Before we jump into the review of Kiss of Death, I will just read out a brief summary for people who perhaps haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while. This is Nick Bianco is caught during a botched jewelry heist. The prosecution offer him a more lenient sentence if he squeals on his accomplices, but he doesn't roll over on them. 3 years into the sentence, an event changes his mind. Okay, so had you seen this before, Jonathan, or was this a first viewing? Oh, you had. Okay,
I did see it a few years ago.
What did you think
really liked it.
the first time? Okay, so you liked it. Was it any different this time around for you, or?
I think that I felt my feelings didn't change about it because I was very taken by it. I still feel that it is not one of my top noirs. If I had to, make a list of the very favorite, but it's right below that. So very much thanks to Richard Widmark, because he kind of steals the show. He's terrific in his role, and he kind of brings it up a notch. I'd say that it's a solid kind of noir. I don't know if you call it not so much mystery, but a noir suspense. And I think it's not exceptional because it doesn't have. I think the script is quite serviceable. It is well written, but it doesn't have the kind of intensity and really crackerjack finesse and style of Double Indemnity or something like that. But it's it's well done, well written, and well acted, I think, in general by the other characters. So a good solid movie, good solid noir, but it's Richard Widmark who brings it up a notch into just about that top category to me.
Yeah, I agree. He's exceptional in it. And I can't remember exactly when I saw this the first time, but for some reason, and I couldn't really put my finger on why, maybe I was just in the wrong frame of mind, but I was never too crazy about it the first time around. I thought it was okay. And I watched it again a couple of days ago, and I agree with you. I, maybe wouldn't say it's one of the best, but I really enjoyed it a lot more. I actually think it's a really good film, and to me, it has that like the Naked City kind of feel to it, because it's procedural, but it's more procedural from the criminal's point of view, because we see this cycle of crime and why these people turn to crime and why they're stuck in crime, which I thought was quite interesting. And then we even see from the the cops' point of view, why they sometimes do shady things in order to get what they need to do. And I think the fact that they went on location, like with the Naked City. I mean, this is actually before the Naked City, but I think that added, because it's not, it doesn't feel like a documentary because it still has a lot of style to it. You know, he's utilizing the German expressionism sometimes, but it has this combination of that, and because every single scene was on location, there's no studio work. So I thought that was perfect because it has a documentary feel to it with the procedurals of why people do what they do and in terms of crime, but then it is quite a thick melodramatic plot at the same time. I don't know if that was if that resonated with you at all.
Yes, I agree with you. And the New York setting, street locations, buildings, is always a big plus to me, because as I've mentioned before in our discussions, even though New York is a secondary location in noir canon, it's not as it wasn't used as often as LA was, and then San Francisco too. But you know, LA had the majority of the settings, the locations for the noir films, but there were quite a few in New York, and the New York ones in particular, I think, always hit the nail on the head as far as the genre atmosphere, because New York has more of the built-in location aspects that I see as quintessential noir. You know, the tall buildings, the claustrophobia that brings about, and the natural kind of shadowy atmospheres by the alleys and the streets, and the kind of disconnect of people being amongst such crowds and yet feeling isolated. It intensifies that noirish isolationist feeling, and or feeling excluded and alone, and in some kind of a very stressful situation, all that. So I think, being a New Yorker, lifelong New Yorker, I'm kind of biased toward that. But I think objectively too, there's something to be said for that. That you can create a great noir in LA and almost any place else, depending on the other aspects of the film. But New York just makes it a bit easier, the locations.
Oh, I agree. I mean, there's something about seeing that New York City skyline right at the beginning. You're in for something special. Always, particularly when they're on location at this time. And this has a little bit of Christmas noir to it, because it begins, which, you know, some films noir film noir movies had Christmas as a part of it, which adds to this desperation and stress, because they don't say this, but Nick, who the main character, is a family man, and he's robbing at Christmas. So you can imagine it's like, oh, it's when everyone's so cheery and happy, and the family want gifts and they want to plan things that are special. And he is, it says, and I thought it was great that in the voiceover, they talk about the fact that he's been looking for work for a year, and it's the prejudice that he's been experiencing, because once people see he has a record, they don't want to hire him. And even when the heist goes wrong and they get caught, they also he gets shot by a cop, and they mention that he saw his father get gunned down by a police officer. So again, we don't know everything about his backstory, but I get the impression that he was brought up in crime, was around violence, but he at his core, he is trying to go straight, which is such a noir theme of people trying to do the right thing, but out of desperation they get pulled the wrong way and they begin to make bad choices. And this is when he goes to jail. And it is, I mean, it's not really a psychological film. It is quite plot heavy. Which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm always fascinated by films that are so plot heavy yet are actually getting at a real truth. In this case, that cycle of crime, and a guy who people don't want to give him a job because of his past, so he's like, well, then screw it, I'll just keep robbing. And then what happens? He goes right back to prison, and even then he has to make a deal with police in order to start ratting on his friends to do more for them even when he gets out, which then screws him over even and it puts him in an even worse situation. So it's that loneliness. It's like he's all alone no matter what, and you feel for him. I really felt
Yes.
bad for him.
Yeah, the
I don't know
vicious cycle, right? He's a very sympathetic character, although a mixed character. Obviously, he's doing very bad things. So he's a very strong noir type of
yeah,
character, and this is what we think of in noir. The main character as being a very troubled and like morally complex a person, very alone in his ordeals and struggling against all odds to try to come out of it in one piece and to find a way to do the right thing, even though he's conflicted about what that right thing is. So all those elements, it played very well by Victor Mature, also Victor Mature. Yeah,
yeah,
the actor, he does a good job with that. So this the spiraling downward and seeing no way out. I mean,
yes,
there's even a noir film called No Way Out, which is
right.
like a fitting
Also
title.
Richard Widmark.
Right, yeah. So I think that was all done very well.
Well, his performance, well, I know he got overshadowed by the more flashier performance of Woodmark. I mean, that's just the difference of the roles. I don't think I don't mean that in the sense that Widmark was scene stealing, but it's just
Yeah.
it's a very, very different part. But I thought he found this balance of having a threatening manner and obviously a guy who's rough, but he is a good person. I think he tries to be a good person, and you see that out of his sense of confidence, but even anxiety and desperation, and that relationship with his family. Like he
Mm.
when after he's been in prison for 3 years, and he initially doesn't take the deal to rat on his friends, and
Mm.
then when he 3 years later decides to, I thought the way he acted that scene was beautiful because he was so nervous, he was sweating it out, and I felt that he felt guilty about what he was doing. I mean, that was my impression,
Hmm.
that he had to rat on these people to get out. And I felt so awful for him, particularly when he finds out in prison that his wife died and he doesn't know anything about it. I mean, he couldn't find out anything about it. There's no one on the outside who he could get to,
Yeah.
and he had to just check the obituaries and see that his wife committed suicide. So he doesn't know where the kids are. In the paper it says that they're in an orphanage. So I'm just like, I'm sitting with those feelings
Mm.
of this guy who had to go to bed at night not knowing where his kids are, and that his wife died, and he doesn't know the details because he's stuck in prison and there's no one to
Yeah.
tell him anything.
Yeah.
And that was so frightening to me. I mean,
Right.
that's such a noir theme, right? It's that
Yeah.
nighttime anxiety.
The way they portray it, it shows us that he's basically a good person,
Right.
because of the guilt he feels, and at first he feels the guilt of, the loyalty to his fellow criminals, so he doesn't rat them out. But then the fact that he makes that switch and decides, despite this lifelong ethic which is drummed into his head about you never rat out anybody,
Right.
but
Right.
he makes that decision to do it because deep down he's a good person, and he feels like finally he just has to do that to try to. I think what I gathered from that, gleaned from that, is for his kids, because that's the main impetus, right? Because he's so worried, heartbrokenly worried about what's going to be with his kids,
Right.
and here he is in prison. So I think that was the main impetus, that this might get me out of prison. So finally I can be with my kids again, and that overrid everything else. So to me, that's a very endearing moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that they have this scene right before that, before he goes to the DA, Louis D'Angelo, played by Brian Donlevy. This woman visits him, Nettie Cavallo, played by Coleen Gray, which is an interesting scene because she doesn't exactly say what happened. She mentions Rizzo, who was a partner of his, one of his crime, the guy that he pulled jobs with. And that's it. And to me, I just took it as a suggestion that there was some kind of an affair that happened with his wife and Rizzo or something. But then she just starts to cry, and they say very little, and he just keeps saying, well, nothing can hurt me, nothing, you know. I at this point, and it's vague, but I think the reason it's vague, and I'm sure you read this, was that his wife, there was a scene with the Rizzo, who we never see, and his wife, and apparently Rizzo raped her. There was a scene which they shot, and it says here the actor Patricia Morrison played Victor Mature's wife, who was attacked and raped by a gangster who was supposed to be watching out for her while Mature is in prison. Afterwards, she commits suicide by sticking her head in the kitchen oven and turning on the gas. Both scenes were cut from the original print at the insistence of the censors, who wanted no depiction of either a rape or a suicide. So she does not appear in the film at all. Mention is made later in the film about Mature's wife's suicide, and an obscure reference is made by Nettie that the unseen gangster Rizzo contributed to the wife's downfall. Because really, you feel like something got edited out.
It's obvious, like... even in this cut of the film, which is the one released and we see now. Yeah, I think that even not knowing about the films they delete, the scenes they deleted, we can kind of gather maybe that happened. I'm afraid to think of that, but it seems like they're implying that happened. That either, I mean, I would think the first time I saw it, I was thinking, because I hadn't read yet about the backstory about this, I was thinking that maybe he raped her, or if not exactly raped, then there's a certain amount of kind of coerced her into an affair, which is tantamount to rape, but something like that. So it's that's something that is in there. And how do you feel about whether I mean, my first inclination is they should have left it in. I would have wanted to see it, but I don't know. Do you think? I mean, I guess it's enough that we can kind of gather or assume that, but I think it would have been. I certainly am curious to see what those scenes were like.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm all for ambiguity and I love suggestions and people can make up their own mind. But I think in this case, what's ultimately more important is a real, an emotional experience and one that hopefully will also challenge you. And I think if we had seen that would have been hard to take, which is so perfect for noir. And you can always feel when the censors interfered with these film noirs, like a film I recently reviewed, Thieves Highway, with Richard Conte, which I love. And they tacked on this happy ending, and you could just feel that the studio demanded something. Yeah. And this is that case as well, where I actually thought it was interesting that they had Coleen Gray do all the voiceover, because you hear this woman doing the voiceover and you don't know till later that it's her. Right. So I don't know if that decision came at the end, but it must have. Well, I shouldn't say it must have, but certainly what she says at the end came later, because, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, the shootout at the end, he was meant to die. Vic, and the fact that she says, "Oh, he came home to me" in the voiceover once they put him in the ambulance, I thought, really? Because he looked like he got shot quite a few times.
Yeah, that was, and what are the odds that not only he was shot multiple times by Udo, the villain, but Udo was shot multiple times by the cops, and Donlevy, when he's examining, he says, he's alive, right? Or maybe afterwards he says it. He says to Nick, as Nick is lying there, assumedly dying at that point, and he's saying, "We got him, and he's alive." So they're both alive after being shot multiple times. Yeah, it's possible, but it's kind of a stretch,
Yeah, that was pretty pretty heightened, and that it reminds me of even the Godfather, when Don Corleone, he gets shot 5 times and he survives. But it's funny, but you never quite question that. I never questioned it till now, but I think maybe in this case, because you see 2 guys getting shot, it's kind of like, how did not one of them die?
Yeah.
But I can
And-
understand why they wanted Udo to live, because they wanted him to pay for his crimes and go to jail.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I thought that would be such a noir theme to have Nick, again, doomed protagonist. He's doomed from the beginning and he's doomed at the end. And it's
Yeah.
not because of a femme fatale or anything in this case. It's because of the cycle of crime that he cannot get out of, because society will not let him get out of it. See, I think that would have been perfect.
I think so too. I think that
Yeah.
that detracts the. Now that you mention it too, I had forgotten why. I had just had a general feeling when I said at the opening of our talk here that I don't put it quite in the top echelon, and I didn't remember exactly why. But this is one of the main points. I think the ending is disappointing
Yeah,
from a noir
yeah.
perspective.
Yes, I
Because
agree.
it would have been a very powerful noir, I think. Made the whole thing feel more powerful
Oh,
if
yeah.
it ended with both of them dead on the sidewalk. That would have been such
yeah.
a great shot,
I think
it's both
so.
of them dead on the sidewalk. Yeah.
I think so. Again, like I said, you can always feel when the censors or the studio got nervous or there was interference. You can always feel it. But the relationship that happens between Nettie and Nick is interesting, because the first time we see her, she was a friend of his wife's, and she
Taking care of their kids.
she had taken care of their kids, and you get a sense that there's an attraction immediately, and then it almost made me laugh that as soon as he gets out of prison, he goes right to her. And I thought, yeah, after 3 years, in jail, that's the lust, right? Was like, God, I gotta find a good woman here. But I thought they performed it so beautifully, because he finds her. It looks like she lives in a boarding house, and just the way they embraced and kissed, like within seconds. And it was just this, at least more from her point of view, because then when they get married later, she talks about having this crush on him for years. And that she was even, even, I don't know, I mean, they're pretty newly married, but she's still treating him like, they're on her first or second date. So I thought the passion they had for each other, it was beyond just people, like, you see in other noir, like people are just like so horny. It was beyond that. It was just a real love and passion. And I thought just the way they interacted, I thought they did that beautifully. I don't know how you felt.
I think it was very sweet. It showed them as, well, certainly she being totally taken and smitten with him, and but he also, not just lusting after her. He seemed to really care for her. That the way they portrayed. So that was sweet. It worked in that way. Although now that you mentioned Nettie, that. I feel that's another thing. It's kind of a little bit lacking for me. Well, I always when there's no femme fatale, I always miss that character.
Yeah.
And she's definitely not a femme fatale.
No, not at all.
She's an ingenue. And a little and too like so goody two shoes. It's really hard to believe in a way. It's a man's fantasy, or let's say a lot of men's fantasies, to have a young, pretty woman who falls so madly in love with you, and will accept you no matter what you do, no matter what you did, and not just accept you, but never lose her undying love for you. It's like, oh wow, where do you find one like that? It's like that's kind of exciting to see, but still it less satisfying as a character, because I would have liked to see something, even if they decided they make the choice of not a femme fatale character, a good woman type, but I would have liked to know a little bit more about her, and see a little bit more conflict in her, or something like that.
I agree. I agree there. Well, because it's interesting, because she is presented as such a good, wholesome person, but at the same time, she's in love with this guy, and she knows he's a crib of his past, because she's known him for so long. And then even before they get married, she knows what he's doing. But again, what he's doing is for the police. So I imagine she probably figured, well, he's a good person. Now he's working with the police, and once they get married, he gets a job. So it's more that she knows about his past, but she now sees him reformed, which the audience, I imagine, could could accept. Like if she was in love with Udo, no one would have believed it.
Yeah, well, but we know this, what you're referring to, by the plot, where they're presenting us with this information. So it kind of checks that box of like, okay, she must have some kind of conflict, but we don't really see it. I would like to see some of it. I would have liked to see, it would have been, you know, more intriguing if we had
I
some
agree.
moments there where we
Yeah.
see that she has some hesitation, she has some conflict
Yeah,
about
I
it.
agree. I agree. Yeah, I agree there. She wasn't as well written as so the male parts. But it was interesting nonetheless. And one thing I liked about it was that once he gets arrested, I couldn't help but laugh. And this lawyer that he has was like, yeah, I'll get you out, no worries. And then all of a sudden he's just in jail. And then I kept thinking, what happened to this lawyer who said he was going to get him out? And then we don't even see him till later when he gets called in. But he's only called in because Nick is trying to make him think that Rizzo is the one telling the police about what they've been doing, which was the police's idea, because they knew, well, if you get let out of jail and they know you ratted on everybody, you're gonna get killed. And he was obviously just some crooked. I like that he wasn't really like they didn't really explain that he was obviously just some shady lawyer, and if anything, maybe they wanted him to stay in jail because like perhaps they're testing loyalties, like if this guy's staying in jail for 3 years and not telling anyone, we're gonna trust him when he comes out. I don't know how you felt about that.
I was wondering about that. I wasn't sure what to make of it, whether the lawyer was just playing him or he really tried to get him out and just didn't try very hard, or got sidetracked with he's got higher level criminals that he's more invested in or something. I don't know which way it was. I guess with a guy like that, you can never know because he's such a shyster lawyer.
Exactly. But I like that they didn't clear that up. And of course, we have our most famous scene in the film was where Tommy Udo throws that poor woman who's disabled down the stairs in her wheelchair. And I think the film needed more of those blows. Like I think, like you said, if the end, if they had both died, things like that, because that scene is so, even now, this is 76 years later, even now that's hard to take. Like I think even in a modern film, if you saw someone do that, made today, that would be quite shocking. And that's where it brings these criminals to another level, because he's after Rizzo and he only kills the mother because to scare Rizzo out of not coming back, because then there's that great phone call he has right after that where he's giggling. I thought it was framed beautifully, where he's on the phone and he takes pleasure in killing, clearly, Udo, and he's like, well, he won't come back because that's not the exact line, but he's how he took the mother out. So I think just showing how capable these men are, I mean, they certainly got to that, but I think it needed that extra edge, Yeah.
Well, one thing I was thinking of, the cops, we were talking about how Nick Bianco was so like torn, but the fact of the cops' incompetence, it's like is more of a nail in his coffin, as even puts him more isolated in this universe. It's like, okay, he finally decides he'll work for the cops, work with the cops, and then here they are, they bungled the whole thing. He said, oh, Donlevy, or his character was his I forgot the cop's name, his assistant DA.
Oh yeah, Louis D'Angelo,
right? And he says, oh yeah, we've got a solid case again, and we're going to convict him, don't you worry about that. He says, oops, that was not guilty. So it's like, oh geez.
Yeah, that was that. I was like, I couldn't believe it, because it like seemed like they were gonna definitely get Udo, and poor Nick had to go on the witness stand in front of Udo right there. I mean, sure enough, they made sure the press didn't get his name in the paper, and they had changed his last name, the new life he's living. But that it doesn't matter, because Udo saw you. Now Udo's a free man, and now he's gonna come after you. And that's where was another, just the quintessential noir was those I love the nighttime anxiety. Like
Mm.
he can't sleep naturally. He's thinking
Right.
this guy's gonna come and shoot up my house. And those great silhouettes. I mean, that was just the great German expressionism right
Mm.
there. Like he goes into the fridge, he opens the fridge, and you just see his silhouette. And there was a little bit of space in the shot. I kept thinking we're gonna see another one jump in that shot,
Mm.
and that Udo's coming in, but it
Mm.
doesn't happen. Same thing when he goes upstairs and he looks at his kids sleeping. We see a silhouette, and I think, is that Udo? And it's just him. So it
Right,
has
yeah,
like
that
almost
was a
like a
great
horror
moment. They
quality
set
to
that up. Yeah,
it.
there's the long shot. We see the shadow of somebody entering the room, and the
Yeah,
music underpins it very well. The
I
person who wrote the
agree.
score, and then of course then it's him. So that was also a good moment, strong moment.
I totally agree. And it made sense that this is when, this one thing that is good about this film is that it puts you in the head of each character, because it makes sense that Udo wouldn't just go shoot up the house because he knows, the people are watching him. He just got a not guilty verdict, and it would be stupid for him to just go in. They're going to know that they're going to be highly suspicious
Right.
that he did it. So
And let
whatever
alone
hit,
shoot anybody, because as it was pointed out, explained to us by D'Angelo,
yeah.
that if that they could put him away for life if they just catch him with a gun. So he knew that even holding a gun could send him to life for life. So we knew that it's even less likely he's going to just break into his house and use a gun to murder him.
Exactly. And again, it was interesting because they are even empathetic towards the cops, because like I know that Nick even said this to him. He goes, you guys are just as bad on your side as we are. And
Right.
and D'Angelo says, yeah, but we go after bad people, which they're right about. But if you think about it, like it's partly their fault, not directly their fault, that this poor mother was killed by Udo, because that their whole thing was to get Nick to talk and talk, and then to go after Udo after. That was all of their ideas. So where you can understand why they would have tried to help Nick by looking like someone else had been the squealer. What they would have never put it together that, well, I guess they would have figured that because the family's then at risk too. But I guess that's the best thing. The best solution was like, well, we won't put you at risk because you're the one helping us, but we'll put one of these other guys at risk.
Yeah.
We'll let the other guy take the fall.
Nick says a line to D'Angelo in his house when the shit's about to hit the fan. He says that. Wait, I wrote it down here. Oh, he says, referring to Udo, he's nuts and he's smarter than you are. So
Yeah,
it's like that,
exactly.
that kind of pins it on the nose. About the bungling cops, in this case.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because he's able to outsmart the cops, which is what makes Nick realize, he's if siding with the cops and working with the cops is only made things worse. It's like, yeah, he got out of jail and everything because of, but now things are even he's more in danger on the outside because of all this testifying and squealing, as they put it, that he had to do. But another scene that it was one of the few times a film noir has made me choke up is when he finally sees his daughters in the orphanage. They're like at a Catholic, there's like a nun working there, so it's like a Catholic orphanage. It just, again, I just thought it was such a great performance from Vic. What's his last name again? I haven't seen a lot of
Victor
Mature, yeah, which is was, I guess, was anglicized when his family got to America, because I think it's
Right.
Maturi, because he's
right. Yes,
he's clearly
Italian.
Italian.
Right.
Well, he's playing Italian here. And it's interesting because we also have an Italian DA, D'Angelo.
Right.
I wonder if that was intentional, because this is like right after World War II. So we're getting a lot of Italians going to America after the war. And I wonder if maybe they thought, oh, if we make one of these the criminal protagonist Italian here, we should probably make the DA also Italian, so we don't throw more.
I assume so. So it's not just
prejudice
all stereotypes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. I couldn't help but wonder. I mean, Brian Donlevy does not look Italian at all.
No, he's Irish, of Irish background. I read.
Right, right. But that scene really choked me up, just the way he hugged them, and I thought it was interesting because they don't just like jump into his arms. It was kind of awkward at first, which I thought
Yeah.
that sounds like something would happen like that. Like they haven't seen him in a long time. They've gotten used to a whole new life. Um, I thought that was well done.
Yeah,
Um,
he played it very believably. I have to say the little girls there were kind of wooden, and I hate to criticize children,
right.
but the thing is that just being objective, I mean they were okay, but it was kind of a little kind of amateurish. So I think, and I've noticed this in a lot of films from that period, from older period. In more recent times, I think directors, filmmakers in general make more of a conscious effort to get kids who really can act well. So I think that we more often you see kids who are really good actors most of the time. And in a lot of old films, they just figured, for kids, just get anybody. It's like, can your daughter act? Can you act? They like grab.
Yeah, I wonder, but that's a good point. I wonder if, I mean, obviously, if it was different, if it was like, at the like Shirley Temple, like because they were like making them out of stars. But I wonder for these like bit parts, how much attention they put to it.
Yeah, for them, of course, if a kid is going to play a main role, they obviously try to get good kids who can act well. But for small roles, I've noticed in a lot of old films that they have kids who are just very wooden, like just amateurish.
Yeah, they're pretty broad often. It's a little large.
Well, maybe, or maybe that's the point, though. It's not. I mean, that's how I see it. But maybe I'm a bit too harsh in my critique because maybe it's seen as part of the genre. Like it's okay for them to be sort of melodramatic. But I'm trying to also square it with the adults because there is that element. This film noir is very stylish in general. The whole the genre, and yet. A good actor is a good actor, and even within that genre, they're believable in the role. So I think that, to me, that's what it boils down to. For kids too, is like, was that kid believable or not? How they delivered the lines,
Yeah, because I mean, even that laugh that Widmark does as Udo was a bold move because it's. I when I first saw it, I thought it was too much, even though I liked it. But when I saw it again, I was like, well, not really. I don't think because he does have a tendency. I think he's a very good actor, and I think I even said this when we did Night in the City when we reviewed that. He sometimes can have a tendency to push. I feel a bit too much, but here it was borderline. It could have been cartoony. And the irony is that he based it on the Joker and Batman, and then because it feels like that when you see like Nicholson do it later and things like that. So you didn't really see actors back then. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I haven't seen a lot of performances back then where they made a choice like that. But I thought he really made it his own, and it added such another dimension to this guy who enjoys killing. Like he's not just ruthless, like he literally enjoys it, and I thought that I thought it worked well.
Yes, a psychopath apparently, probably a psychopath. And yes, and I think that I bought it. I felt that it was right up to the edge. It's like a very ballsy move to play him like that, because it could very easily have just gone over the top, but it doesn't go over the top for me because he's so good at it. It's so convincing that I buy it, that this could be a real character like that who is frighteningly just so nuts, so psycho or something like that. He would talk like that, he would laugh like that. I bought it.
Yeah, so did I. I thought it worked really, really well. Another scene that I thought was great, and this was how they got through I love how, many movies, but particularly when they filmed Noir, got around they must have done this intentionally to get around the production code, because when he has to then later on go after Udo, when the cops say, go find things out about Udo, and he goes along, they go to this, where this prostitution ring, and you don't really know exactly where they are. Someone shady opens the door, and then they go down this hallway, and Nick just says, "What's that smell?" And And then Udo goes, perfume. And that's all we see. And then in the following scene, Carl Malden, who's in this is one of his first film roles.
Yeah.
He has a small part in it. He's, Nick goes in and he's telling them everything that he learned from Udo. And then Carl Malden goes, I bet you had a good time last night. And then he's like, oh, God, I'm just glad I don't have to do that again. So we know exactly what happened right there. It's like you got to read right between the lines, right? He clearly, Udo wanted to go sleep with the prostitute. And of course, he had to go along with it. Because if he didn't go along with it, he would have been like, he would have been totally suspicious of him. And I thought they did that so well. I thought that was so great. I don't know how you felt about that.
It crossed my mind that is that what happened, but
it was very subtle.
Yeah, I'm not maybe quite as astute at picking things up as you, because
I looked for
it right away. But now that you say it, now that you point it out, so, of course that's what happened. Yeah, but at first I was thinking, is that what he did? Is that what happened? But it was very well done. Oh, one thing, I was wondering, when did the rules of engagement change for cops? Because you notice they shoot him in the back. I mean, it's the back of the leg, but they're shooting towards his back in the opening scene when they're catching him from the heist.
They shoot Nick.
Yeah. And I see this all the time in those old movies, is that cops shoot criminals or potential or alleged criminals, the people they think are the thief. They just shoot them in the back. It's like that. They couldn't get away with that these days, but I wonder when the rules of engagement must have changed at some point.
I thought it was his leg. Was it his
back? No, it was his leg, but he was running away from them.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Is that it was towards his back. They could, if I don't know, were they aiming at his back or were they aiming at his leg? But they were aiming at him as he's running away from them. The cops are not allowed to do that now.
Right.
I mean, rightfully so. You're not allowed to shoot people in the back.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, my impression of that was that's a way to I guess as a way to stop him was to put a bullet in his leg. That's what I got from it.
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah.
And
that'll stop him all right. It's just like cops can be brought up on charges these days for doing that.
Of course, because you'd have to just chase him. You can't just shoot. But I guess I don't know what the law was back then. I guess they could just shoot as long as they didn't kill. I don't know, or they can kill and just cover it up.
You can't control whether you're going to kill him or not. I assumed I'd have to look into it, right? But I assumed that it was legal if it escaping assumed thief, because how do they know he's the one? They think he.
Oh, I see. That's right, because they didn't know at that point, because it was just this one guy who ran out.
Yeah, they don't have
the
proof,
alarm
right?
Off. That's true. So I didn't think of that.
They assumed he's the criminal or one of the criminals, and I also assumed that the law was at the time, if you tell somebody to stop running and they don't stop running, you can shoot them in the back.
Yeah, Right. That's a good point. I didn't think of that. That's true, because they didn't know who the hell he was. I mean, obviously it's suspicious he punched someone and ran out, but he could have been doing that for maybe he's got a sick mother outside. There's all kinds of reasons why. I even know it's highly suspicious. Obviously it was highly suspicious that it was him, but they didn't know for sure.
And you mentioned punching. That's another thing too. It seems like Nick got off easy on the punching the cops. He punches two cops. One he's running away from the heist, the cop there near the door, and that's right before he shot. And then he punches the assistant DA, D'Angelo, there in his house.
Oh, right, yeah.
So it's like, and D'Angelo seems to just completely brush it off. He seems to be
okay
very concerned, and he's fine with it. So it's like, maybe there are extenuating circumstances, of course. So I can see him, maybe cutting him some slack or giving him a break because of that. But I felt like there should be some reaction. There should be a little bit like, I don't know, you're going to get something for doing that,
Yeah, that had popped out to me as well, and I pretty much assumed what you did was that because you knew the stress that Nick was under, and that there's a strong, his life and his family are being threatened, that he let it go.
Let it slide, but which it's possible, it's conceivable that he might let it slide. But I think I would have liked to see some little indication, like Donlevy about to where we're gonna say to somebody like, okay, well he's getting something for punching me like that, and then somebody, then someone else like convinced me to let it slide. And it was like,
Right.
all right,
Right.
or let him, or he himself talking to himself about it, and then all right, I'll let it slide. But at least first impulse, the cop's not gonna let him go without any punishment for that,
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. That was a little jarring for me. But no, you're right. I mean, the film it has some flaws to it for sure. But and some of it is not the director's fault. It's because of the interference from the censors and stuff like that. But I think overall it is really good. I think it is quite good. I enjoyed it much more the second time. So I don't know what my problem was the first time.
Yeah, I know you started off asking me about that. I was trying to recall, and as I said at the outset here, I think I felt the same way pretty much. I mean, I really liked it in the ways that I described and that we've been discussing both the first time and the second time. I enjoyed it just as much. So to me, that shows also that it holds up very well. I
Yeah.
don't always enjoy films as much the second time, but only really good films. And this I say is a really good one.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think it holds up well. Also, particularly that this element of the people not being able to get out of crime even when they try to, because I forget what the miniseries was called. That was about the Central Park Five, the people who were accused of
Right.
rape,
I,
and they show actually it goes into great detail that when they got out of prison, they tried so hard to get work, and no one would hire them because they had a record, and one of them ends up going into drug dealing because he thought, well, what am I going to do? And then
Yeah.
he went back to prison. So this is interesting that they show that in this. I mean, this has more of a heavy melodramatic plot, and that they obviously at the time over I don't know how many episodes it was to really make that clear in the show. But I thought that was in this to see that in this film, I thought had great value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
agree.
so I highly recommend it for anyone who hasn't seen it. I highly recommend checking it out. Well, Jonathan, thanks so much for joining me on another film noir review and for bringing your pals along.
My pleasure and their pleasure.
Yeah, and please come again. I will leave the links in the description box below again for where you can follow Jonathan on social media and to check out his the great short they made called Casa Noir. Jonathan, thanks again, and come again. Let's do it again sometime.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. And if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner. To your top left in just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Please click the like button below and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of Kiss of Death. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.